the morality of the market. Most people think that markets are efficient but not moral. I believe that the market may not be moral or immoral, but the market encourages moral behavior and rewards moral behavior. Let me give you a few examples. I have a mango, I have a fruit seller that I go to, and I've been going to her for 20 years. Her shop is in Khan Market, close by. And one day, I wanted to buy mangoes. My grandchildren were visiting, so I wanted good quality mangoes. And she said, well, I have excellent quality mangoes, but they're expensive. And when she told me the price, she says, yes. I said, my God, this is very, very expensive. And she says, yes, they're from Ratnagiri, and they are Apus mangoes, Alfonsos. And so I sort of reluctantly bought a dozen. And I came home, we cut the mangoes, and they turned out to be bad. Well, I told a dozen of my friends. My friends told a dozen of their friends. And the word spread around. And everybody had a story to tell about her, how she had misclaimed on another day, and how she had cheated another person on another day. And soon she began to lose market share because we all went to her competitor next door. So here's an example of how bad behavior on her part lost her market share, and the market actually punished her for misclaiming about her mangoes. The same thing comes with employees. If a company treats its employees with respect, if a company is fair, promotes the best person, if a company gives opportunities to employees to grow in their jobs, that company gets a very quick reputation. And when that company goes to IIM or IIT to recruit young people, young graduates, they will join that company. Whereas an old Lalaji company that will always give the job to an incompetent nephew over a professional will not get good professional managers, and that company will lose market share as a result. Second example, third example. A third example is of the relationship between the company and the supplier. So I talked about a customer, I talked about an employee, a supplier. Every company has a temptation. Every purchase manager in a company has a temptation to squeeze the supplier in price. He'll always say, oh, but I can get it cheaper from this company. And when you squeeze your supplier too hard, what happens? What happens is that you get hurt because the supplier then will give you a component that will be substandard. And that component, when it goes into your product, will make your product less effective. And so you get hurt. So therefore, treating suppliers fairly is to be rewarded. And if you treat your suppliers unfairly, you get punished. And fourth example is the company and its relationship to the community, the fourth stakeholder. And here, companies which are sensitive to communities, which help out communities in distress, that the companies where they work, those companies get a good reputation. And good reputation then translates itself into getting good, when the company needs help, then the citizens come forward. If that company gets a reputation, so people want to ally themselves, they make partners with that company. So reputation comes with that. And so, so it is not true that capitalism is immoral. In fact, it is the opposite. It is socialism that is in fact immoral, because giving a person a job for life, what you do then is take away all responsibility from that person. If a person, of course, there are exceptional people who will work for the greater good of the company or for the state, but that is a minority of people. The average person is self-interested, and by being self-interested doesn't mean you're greedy. That's the other mistake. When people say that capitalism is a creed of greed, is not. There's a difference between being self-interested and selfish. Self-interested just means that if it rains, I carry an umbrella. Nothing selfish about that. That if I go to the market and I want the best quality of mangoes for the lowest price, that's being self-interested. Nothing selfish about that. Yes, if you are self-interested in the sense that you then are willing to step on other people's toes to get what you want, or you hurt others in the process, that is wrong. But that's not what Adam Smith called self-interest. So we should always remember that when we easily make the statement, oh, but capitalism is about greed. No, capitalism is about self-interest. A central idea of the market is trust. That you get into a taxi, the driver of the taxi does not immediately ask you to open your wallet to make sure that you have the money to pay for the taxi. He will wait, he will trust you till you get out, and then you may have your moment of truth if you don't have the money. Similarly, you give somebody a check and that person graciously accepts the check and doesn't immediately want you to call the bank first so that he can speak to the bank manager to make sure that you have enough bank balance to cover the check you have given. So the important thing here is that businessmen from time immemorial have understood this notion. And I was talking about business communities of India. This idea is sacrosanct. For example, one of the business castes in India called the Marwadis from the state of Rajasthan. And they have a word called sak. Sak means trust. And a Marwadi, or any Banya in fact, they will give you a piece of paper which is like a promissory note. I promise to pay this person 50,000 rupees and on this and this date or after this and this date. Now that hundi, it's called, that hundi can be exchanged anywhere in the world amongst the members of the community. And so this idea is a very central idea because the market system, while it does require enforcement of contracts and does require to go to the court, the fact is that trillions of dollars are exchanged every day around the globe in transactions based on trust. You don't need a contract for every time that you are going to transact with another human being. And this is an important idea which people who are not familiar with the market system. They naturally they have a distrust, and that distrust means very often that they will never be able to grow their business, to achieve their ambitions. The notion of trust was beautifully explained when a Frenchman visited America. And he said, this was 150 years ago, in the mid-1830s, a man called de Tocqueville, Alexis de Tocqueville, he wrote a wonderful book called Democracy in America. And in that book, he explained why Americans are different. Of course, he was comparing them to Europeans, and he didn't know people in other parts of the world. But he said Americans are different because they came to America as immigrants. They didn't come with families, they didn't come with friends. And so they depended on creating in their neighborhood that friendship with new people. And so he called them joiners. So Americans are the people who created Boy Scouts, who created Little League Baseball, and all kinds of institutions, garden clubs, book clubs, and so they could meet. They invited each other for dinner, and they got active in the neighborhood. Now, when two neighbors come together, after a few minutes, what do they talk about? They talk about the condition of the road. There's a puddle, there's a khadda on the road, the light from the lamp is broken on the street lamp. They'll talk about the fact that the school teacher is absent from the government school. And so they talk about problems of the neighborhood. And this neighborliness is what creates people, what Americans were called joiners. He says they join each other to solve the problems of the neighborhood. He said we in Europe depend on the state. Americans depend on themselves. So when you are having dinner with your neighbor, then the next day you say, well, I know somebody in the government office, in our municipal office. I'll call him and tell him that the street light is not working, and they'll get the light fixed. Similarly, the garbage has not been collected. They'll call somebody and get the garbage collected. So it is through this, and the dramatic example that Robert Putnam, the American scientist, gives between North and South Italy. Why is North Italy 6 times richer than Southern Italy? The reason is the Northern Italians are joiners. They meet once or twice a week to sing in choral societies. In the church, they sing, and after that they have wine and cheese, and over wine and cheese they talk about the problems of the neighborhood. And so, similarly, this is how trust is built in a society. Whereas in Southern Italy, the principle you follow is my family, right or wrong. My neighbor can go to hell. So there's distrust. And therefore, because there's distrust, a customer does not trust a supplier. And so the market system operates through trust. An interesting outcome of socialism, interesting and sad or tragic outcome, is that they say that sin of capitalism is greed. Well, the sin of socialism is envy. And there's a wonderful novel from the 1920s by a Soviet writer named Olesha, when these women are sitting around a room, everybody has everything, they wear the same clothes, they have the same furniture, they do exactly the same things, but one woman that day, who has invited them to her home, has received a beautiful tablecloth. Well, by the time the book ends, they are filled with so much envy for this woman who has got this beautiful tablecloth that they practically kill her.